Just to let you know, as a trigger warning, this episode talks about eating disorders and extreme weight loss. I've given space within the episode to fast forward for those who might be sensitive to these stories. There's also an F-bomb. I'm Daria Matza, and welcome to Everybody Podcast. I'd like to start today with a little confession. I'm not super comfortable being in front of the camera, or even on this microphone. I've spent my career as a documentary filmmaker comfortably behind the scenes, but I wanted to navigate these waters with you, and decided to just deal with my discomfort. Then last month, I pushed aside another resistance and signed up for Instagram. As I started following people in this world, I immediately noticed there were lots of bodies of all sizes posting selfies in their underwear or bikinis. And to be totally honest, I was a little put off. While I really appreciated the size diversity, I was seeking these deeper truths and politics around body issues. And so much of Instagram just felt surface or simply like fashion. During this time, I came across Instagram body positive celebrity Megan Crabbe. Rainbow haired, she was dancing in her underwear for 730,000 followers, and I had that feeling come up. Is this really helping? But I'm all about exploring my discomforts. So I asked Megan for an interview and quickly learned she's a delight. She's aware of the controversies with the body positive movement and is working to address them. Can we start by talking a bit about your eating disorder?
Yeah, absolutely. I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa when I was 14, but for me, the real troubles, they started as early as I can remember. I had issues with my body at 5, and I was so convinced at 5 years old that I was enormous and everyone around me was skinny and pretty and happy. And over the years, those just kind of morphed. And it didn't take very long for me to pick up the diet culture message. If you're going to be happy, then you have to be smaller. And here are all these ways that you can make yourself smaller. Between 5 and 10, I was kind of picking up the body image issues and picking up the diet culture. And at 10, I went on my first proper diet. And I came home to my mum and I said, right, mum, I'm getting healthy. And it was just cut out this, cut out that, weigh yourself every day, exercise every day. That really should have been alarm bells for my family. I thought, yeah, okay, if she wants to be healthy and lose a bit of puppy fat, then fine. So that was at 10. And over the next few years, every time I went on a diet, it just got more extreme. I was cutting out another food group or I was exercising for that much longer. And it just kind of built and built. So 14, it consumed everything. And before I knew it, it wasn't just dieting anymore. And actually, it was a mental illness, because to me, I was just doing what I had to do. I think, a massive part of having an eating disorder is that denial. It's that I don't have a problem. Like, look at me, that I obviously need to lose weight. I'm just doing what I've been taught to do. Like, this is what you do.
At this point in the interview, we were having some Skype problems and moved to the phone.
It was at its worst probably at 15, because it took me so long after being diagnosed to actually realize that I had a problem. And it really took me kind of going to the brink and being in danger of losing my life to make me realize that this wasn't just me trying to lose weight, that there was something more going on here, and that the kind of control I thought I had in my mind, that wasn't control at all. That was, the voice of my eating disorder. That was anything but control. So at 15 is when I was hospitalized and fed through a tube. And that was the time that my parents were told to prepare themselves, because there was no guarantee that my body was going to last any longer. So I'm extremely lucky to be here and very thankful for that every day.
How thin were you at that moment?
Can I put a trigger warning on this? Because I don't want anyone listening. So if anyone's listening right now and you've got an eating disorder and you don't want to hear, turn the sound off for 5 seconds.
Yes.
I was 65 pounds.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And so your parents had put you first into the psychiatric children's hospital and then you went into the hospital?
Yes. So when I was first diagnosed, it was with my GP. And then I started having weekly counselling sessions, except it wasn't really counselling. It was kind of me going into a room with a middle-aged man in a suit saying, right, well, you really have to start eating. Let's weigh you and tell me why you're not eating. And so it was it was useless. Like my experience with mental health services were just terrible. And I've recently started having therapy again voluntarily. And it was a lot to make myself go back because I had such a shitty experience. But that didn't work, needless to say. The man in the suit didn't really help me. And so when that weekly therapy didn't do anything, that was when I had to spend the summer in a youth psychiatric unit. And there was probably about 20 different people, all under 18, all with different issues. So it wasn't a specialized eating disorder unit. So it was an experience. There were those classic moments that you see in films or read about, like you're sleeping at night and then you hear someone screaming and then like you hear them being sedated. Like it was kind of a horror story. And I spent about 2 months in there. And then my parents took me out because basically I was just getting worse. And I wasn't thinking that I belonged there. You know, I wasn't committing to getting better because I still didn't think there was a problem. And I just thought, I don't belong here. I don't belong with all these people. I'm not like them. So after a summer there, my parents took me out and kind of said to me, you've got one last try. Like, you make progress and you commit to counselling, etc., or it's going to have to be hospital. And it got to the point where there was no option anymore. And I remember, like, the last day before I was hospitalized, I was barely even conscious. Like, it got to the point where my dad had to, like, lift me into the car and take me to hospital. And that was where I spent about, another, like, 2 months in hospital, just being fed through the tube and still fighting and still not admitting that I needed to recover. And it was only at that breaking point that I realized that something had to be done. And you get a glimpse of rationality, and you get a moment where your actual self, your rational brain, can cut through the eating disorder voice and make you see that something is going on that is going to kill you. It was so fleeting because then the eating disorder voice just comes back and takes control again. But it was enough. And seeing my family kind of break, my dad especially break, that was enough to make me realize like what had happened. And I'm a very all or nothing person. So when I decided that I wasn't going to listen to the eating disorder anymore, it was just full in all the way, and it kind of spirals and spirals, and it wasn't a good way to do recovery. You know, I didn't have professional support. I didn't learn how to eat intuitively. I didn't learn how to eat normally. I just went for it. And that then launched me into the kind of diet binge cycle for the next 6 years.
What do you feel like was the next step that kind of brought your recovery to a level more healed?
I always say to people that I started recovery when I was at the end of 15 years old, right? And I don't actually feel like I truly mentally recovered until I was 21 and I first found body positivity. Because, you know, people have this perception that as soon as your weight restored in anorexia, you recovered. And even like the medical professionals that I had assigned to my case, that's what they thought. You know, I'd gained weight. I was fine. I was signed off of counseling. I didn't have to go for weigh-ins anymore. Like, I was cured to them. And that's such a misunderstanding of what eating disorders are, because they're not a weight. That's a side effect. You know, any other illness, if one of the side effects clears up, you wouldn't then say, oh, the whole thing must be cured then. So I don't feel like I actually dealt with a lot of the issues that I had mentally until I found body positivity and learned about diet culture and intuitive eating and feminism and all these different things. And I started reading about eating disorders and kind of recognizing my own experience. And even now, like, I read things and I think, why did no one tell me that? Or why was this not explored when I was ill? Like, how were people so clueless? And they still are. So that's when the healing really began, like years and years after I was supposedly recovered.
It's so problematic to attach weight to eating disorders for the reasons of your story, and then also for people who aren't a specific weight, but they're suffering inside, but they don't look like it, and then they feel like they can't get help because they don't weigh a certain weight or something. It can be so devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that not sick enough mentality. And that's already so rife when you have an eating disorder. You are already telling yourself, I'm not sick enough for help. So if the actual professionals are also telling you you're not sick enough for help,
yes,
it's a recipe for disaster. And, you know, everyone deserves help. Everyone deserves to have their mental health issues listened to and get support with them. It doesn't matter how much you weigh at all.
That's so well said. What role did Instagram play in this kind of next level of recovery with discovering body positivity?
Well, Instagram was my first insight into body positivity. So it was the summer of however many years ago, 3 years ago, and I was on my last ever ridiculous diet and exercise regime, and I'd actually finally hit the goal weight that I always thought was going to make me happy, and I was still miserable. So I was saying, right, well then I've hit that weight, that hasn't made me happy, might as well go lower, maybe that weight will make me happy. So there I was on Instagram looking for Fitspo because I had to do another workout that day and I needed motivation, so I was looking for pictures of abs, and somehow, no idea how this happened, instead stumbled across my friend Melly, who is yours truly Melly on Instagram. And she is this just a beautiful, vibrant, plus-size woman. And she was on Instagram wearing a bikini and saying, I am happy as I am. And it just completely blew my mind because I had never, ever, ever considered that as an option. There was this woman in a body who I didn't think you were allowed to be happy in, daring to say, actually, I'm happy. You could be happy too, as you are. And, nobody had ever said that to me. Nobody had ever seriously said to me, maybe you could be good enough as you are. Maybe you didn't have to diet and lose weight and try to force yourself into another body type. So there was Melissa. And then from her, I found all these other people, every shape and size, all of them just kind of rebelling against the diet culture rules of change your body, then be happy. They were just daring to be happy as they were. And it was really Instagram that kind of gave me a sense of community. A lot of people say, well, it's just an app. But to me, it became the first place I felt understood by and I learned from, and I really felt like I belonged. So I owe Instagram a lot, and the body positive community there is still flourishing, and it's just such an amazing place to be because there's not many places in society where people just gather around and support each other and uplift one another.
Was it something that felt instantaneous for you in that moment?
Oh God, no. It was it was a painful mind shift, I would say. It was. So the first day I found Melly, I tried to just ignore that I had seen her. I tried to click away. I went back to looking for pictures of abs. I went back to doing my workout and, going on my ridiculous diet plan for that day. And I really tried to ignore it because, and I understand why people are reluctant to get into the body positive community because it's terrifying. It is terrifying to consider dropping everything that you've ever believed about food and weight and your body and your value and think, maybe I've had it wrong all these years, maybe actually this isn't the way to be happy. And I was terrified of that. And I remember I just tried to keep going on the diet, but I couldn't ignore it. It kept cropping up in my mind. I kept thinking about Melly and the other people that I'd seen and thinking, maybe this is the way. And I had to slowly admit to myself that what I'd been doing for all those years wasn't working. It wasn't making me like the way I looked. It wasn't making me happy. It definitely wasn't making me feel fulfilled. It was a crossroads moment, and I think everyone has to have that crossroads moment of, am I going to keep going or am I going to try something different and actually admit that maybe another way is the best way for me.
It's so interesting the way you talk about it. I had this image of just the seed being planted in your brain that couldn't be stopped from growing, and it kept just calling your name.
It's kind of the first thing that ever helped me make sense of my entire life because, I went through all those years, as everyone does who gets caught in the diet culture cycle of, I'm the problem, I'm the failure, something is wrong with me. And for the first time, this was a message saying the problem isn't you. The problem is outside of you and it's bigger than you. And it was just that kind of relief. It was a relief and everything made sense after I found it.
So for those who don't know what the body positive movement is, can you just describe it?
To me, body positivity is just about knowing that you have value in the body that you have now and that you don't have to change your body in order to find self-love or happiness. And there's so many different strands of body positivity in itself. There's the self-love strand, which is personal and you overcoming your body image issues. Then there's the more political strand of fighting fat phobia and size prejudice in society, and that's where body positivity originates from. And then there's the intersectional parts of, it's not just about size, it's also about diversity of skin colors and age acceptance and, gender acceptance and all different kinds. At the base level, it's the self-love.
What do you think that looks like on Instagram? If you were to open a feed that was all body positive posts, what would someone see?
Well, my Instagram feed is just people of all shapes and sizes, all colours, all levels of physical ability. Still quite lacking on the all ages because I think probably because social media is still quite a youth-orientated thing. At the moment, there's a bit of tension in the body positive community because it's kind of being overrun by fairly slim, white, able bodies who are also conventionally attractive. And so there's this dichotomy almost of body positivity is for everyone, but we have to keep pushing the bodies who really need representation the most to the forefront. And I will be the first to admit that I should not hold the place that I do in the body positive community. And it is things like my level of thin privilege and my conventionally attractive features that have allowed me to kind of have the standing that I do.
I'm so glad you're so honest about that because it was actually something I was hoping for us to talk about in a bit too. I mean, when we look at the way your presence has happened online, it seems like it's happened pretty fast. Could you talk about the rise to your BOPO celebrity?
Yeah, I mean, it still seems kind of ridiculous to me because most days I'm just sat at home in my pajamas, like playing with my dogs, and then like people say things like that. It did happen fairly quickly and wasn't planned in the slightest. Like when I started my account, I just wanted to spread this message. I just wanted to tell other people, hey, look, there's this other way of seeing yourself and of living. And then it kind of, catapulted and body positivity had a massive media moment in the spotlight right when I got into it.
Was it the media that saw your account that then more people started following you and it kind of caught on a bit more?
So I first went viral probably about 18 months ago. And then it's just a snowball, one media outlet covers you and then another sees it and then another, and it just carries on from there. And the Don't Hate the Shake videos, they usually pick up some crowds.
Let's talk about those. Can you tell people who don't know what is Don't Hate the Shake?
Don't Hate the Shake is a movement started by Melissa, yours truly, Melly. And I believe she just filmed herself dancing one day in a bikini, decided to call it Don't Hate the Shake, and had it as a celebration of just our bodies in movement. I think it's far easier to get to like our bodies in a still picture. And when we actually see ourselves in movement and we see the jiggling and all the moving around, we still can get quite taken aback. So Melissa wanted to start this movement just as a celebration, and she encouraged everyone else in the community to do it because back when the community was still quite small, we did these self-love challenges all the time. One person would start it, tag another person, and then it would just go around the community. And that's what Melissa did. And then suddenly loads of people started doing them. And I did my first one to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, and I was terrified. I was just absolutely terrified. And I got my first ever troll on that video. And that was still when my account was tiny, like maybe a few hundred followers maybe. And yeah, over time they just kind of became a regular feature for a lot of people in the BOPO community. And they're just one of my favorite things to do because they're so joyful and they're so happy.
Can you talk a little bit more about the shift from terror to joy in doing them?
I was terrified for quite a while. I remember the first picture in less clothing that I put on Instagram, and I was just sweating. My face was red. My heart was pounding, and I just couldn't bring myself to click post. I was sure that as soon as I clicked post, these hordes of trolls would just run on and just destroy all the work that I had done on accepting myself. So I clicked post, and people were really, really nice. One troll came along on the Don't Hate the Shake video, for example, and I still remember what they said because it was the first troll I ever got. And they said, Taylor Swift never intended for her song to be abused like this.
Oh, man.
I know. So I just wrote back, yeah, I'm sure she never intended for her dance song to be danced to. And then just kind of tried to get on with my day and tried to shake it off. And the more trolls that I got, the easier it was. My skin got thicker, and you see the same comments over and over again, and you start to learn that the problem isn't you. Like, the problem is them. If they feel the need to attack a stranger on the internet, like, it's not you. They've got something going on there that they need to deal with.
You're so good at handling them.
It's the same comments over and over and over again. And you get exhausted. Eventually you just think, I'm just going to block, because it does nobody any good. Most trolls, they're not coming into it wanting to have an open discussion and, like, maybe consider other views. They just want to cause pain. So if you don't give them that satisfaction and you just say, nope, gone, bye, that's actually going to piss them off the most.
Is there moments, though, that any of them still seep in? You seem so confident with this. I just wondered if you have those moments of, like, it actually seeping in a bit.
A few weeks ago, I really pissed off the right-wing Trump-supporting teenagers on Instagram. It was bad. So basically what that particular group of people do usually, they gang up. They tag their friends, they write on their forums and say, let's all go get this person. And they did that to me. So me and my boyfriend Ben, who is my assistant troll blocker, spent 8 hours, no joke, 8 hours straight blocking, just blocking and deleting. And it was exhausting. And, none of the actual things that were being said were really hurting because, it's the same shit every day. But it was the sheer volume. And sometimes, even if the comments themselves don't get to me, the thought of, holy shit, this is still what people believe. Like, we're still so far from making a real dent in this hatred. That can get to me. And, if I'm not having a good day, that can make me just want to put down my phone and never post again.
It's like hitting you in the level of, oh God, this is humanity, that this is where we're at with the state of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. And, every so often you just realize that this stuff that we consider to be, like, so basic and so obvious is still radical to so many people.
Right. What did you post that made the Trump people so mad?
Oh, it was a weight gain picture. So lately I've done a couple of pictures of before I found BOPO and I was dieting compared to now, and I've gained, I don't know how much weight I've gained because I haven't weighed myself in years, but I've gained a significant amount of weight. So I post that and say, this is okay, and that really pisses people off. There's something about saying weight gain is okay that just cracks in their mind. So one of the people took my picture and we posted it on their page just with a caption that said, "You're dying." And then the attack kind of started.
So can we go back a little bit about what you were saying with some of the recent criticisms of the body positive movement, with it being so limited? What's kind of your take on that, and what do you think needs to be done?
I am of the opinion that it's really important to recognize and respect where this movement came from. Because, without the radical fat acceptance of the 70s and, like, the fat underground and the first people who really made this movement start, we wouldn't have body positivity today. And so I fully recognize that I am where I am because I have been privileged, and this movement was not designed for me. It's helped me massively, and I'm so thankful for it. But I think in order to respect, like, where it's come from, we have to keep pushing the voices that need representation the most to the forefront. So if you have a platform, like, you have to talk about the issues. You have to share the other people's voices. You can't just take it for yourself. And, it's that thing of it's more than self-love. It is political. The issues of fat phobia and diet culture is political, and how we've been made to feel about our bodies is political. So we need to keep pushing for representation and inclusion and just pushing the boundaries.
I just think about the fear and terror you had in posting that first picture with not that many clothes on, and then how compacted that might be by somebody who's in a bigger body. The level of hatred they would receive online in the trolls could be devastating.
Yeah, 100%. And I see that in the community with my friends who are bigger than I am and who post the same things that I do and just get ridiculous amounts of hate. When people talk about thin privilege, a lot of people, they see it as a personal attack. They see it as saying, well, if I'm smaller, you're saying that I can't have issues with my body and I don't deserve to be here. And that's not what it is at all. Like, everyone in the world, no matter what they look like, can have issues with their body, whether they're fat, thin, or in between. You can have such awful body image issues. But the difference is that your inner issues, your mental health issues with how you look, they are not going to be reflected the same way when you go out into the world. So a thin person might have the biggest body image issues ever. They might be absolutely just destroyed by how they think about themselves. But when they go out into the world, they're not going to be seen as disgusting and lazy and a burden, and they're not going to be discriminated against for how they look. And, you know, like recognizing that difference is not the same thing as saying one is more important or this one matters more. It's just respect, you know, it's just saying we were not given equal opportunity. All of our issues count, but there is a difference, and that difference needs to be recognized.
Do you have some ideas of how to do that?
I think, like I said, just keep trying to like elevate the voices who talk about this. For example, my friend Danny, who runs Choose Life Warrior, she's fucking amazing, and she always talks about this. And I think learning not just about body positivity as it is today, but about radical fat acceptance, because that's where it starts, and that's where it should still be mainly focused.
You reminded me actually of one of your posts I was looking at last night, which was you somewhere beautiful, tropical looking, in your bikini. And I was looking at what people were saying, and there were so many questions about where you got your bikini, like the fashion piece, right? And I feel like there's this thing that happens a lot, and it makes me kind of uncomfortable with, it's like the deeper message feels lost in the fashion.
Especially within plus size fashion blogs, there's so much pressure to always be super glam and like super fashionable, and that's not supposed to be the point. It's supposed to be what's underneath that. And especially with social media, like how a page looks, how you're presenting yourself, unfortunately matters. We all recognize that.
Do you feel like the people that are able to post themselves in bikinis at whatever size they're at have a more natural sense to be an extrovert personality, or maybe even exhibitionist?
Anytime a woman online shows her body, there's all these assumptions about, well, she just wants male attention, or she's just being an exhibitionist. But we're not there for that. This is more than saying, hey, look at my body. This is saying, I am reclaiming my body. I am doing what I want with my body. I'm taking it back, and I'm celebrating that with you. And maybe if you see it, you'll feel that way about yourself too. You know, it's so much more than girls online in their bikinis. And even when I meet people sometimes, I've done interviews, for example, people expect me just to be like, yeah, wear a bikini, love your body. And it's not just that. It's so much more than that. And there's a real issue, I think, where we still see a woman online showing their body, and we make all these assumptions, and we have all these internal, like, slut-shaming thoughts about them. And bodies do not have to mean anything other than what we say they mean. You know, if you're showing skin, that doesn't mean necessarily sexuality. That doesn't mean you're trying to please others. You know, it's about time we let people decide for themselves what showing their bodies means.
I think, too, it's so important that we're changing the landscape of what people see in the world. You know, we're so used to in our culture before social media, all we had was magazine images or what's on TV or what's in movies. But by changing what images are constantly going into your brain, I think you do change the psychology of how you view bodies in the world.
I say this all the time, but, you know, what we see teaches us how we see ourselves. They're not just images that we passively receive and are like, oh, well, that's an image. We measure ourselves against those images every single day. And, you know, there are, I'm sure you know, like plenty of studies showing that even if you look at a magazine with Photoshopped ideal bodies in it for 15, 30 minutes, you feel worse about yourself once you finish looking at it, because we instantly compare ourselves. It's what we've been taught to do. Social media is the antidote that we've been given to that, and changing your social media feed is so easy and so powerful, and everyone should do it.
Do you work as well, or has this become your kind of full-time?
No, this isn't, like, I don't get paid for this. People think that I do, but I actually don't make any money from Instagram, unfortunately. But what I do for a living is I'm a carer for my older sister who has cerebral palsy. So yeah, family carer by day and BOPO warrior by night.
Nice. And does it take a lot of your time?
Yes. It takes a lot of time. People don't realize, it's very time consuming, very energy consuming and emotion consuming. It's worth it because it's kind of given me like a purpose in life, as cheesy as that sounds.
What advice do you give for people who just say, how can I stop hating my body?
I wish I had a magic wand and I could just wave it over everyone who asks me that question. The truth is that this is something that you're going to have to seek out yourself and work for. It's not the easiest change in the world. Of course it's not. You're changing your whole mindset. So as long as you're willing to do the research and learn and really put in the work to change your mindset, you will get there.
Yeah, it seems like you have to kind of find your self-tailored plan that gives you that feeling. The people that have inspired you may be different from the people that inspire somebody else, or the books or the steps you need to take.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also really inspired by the eating disorder recovery community because that's where my roots are as well. And other people might be more inspired by fat positivity rather than body positivity because they want that more radical version. And yeah, it's out there. It's all out there. We just never get told about it.
I had asked you about kind of crowdsourcing some questions, and you said, well, everyone will ask about my hair and how I do my hair because you have this really amazing, wonderfully rainbowed hair. And it kind of brought something up for me, which was, does that bother you that people just see your hair and not the bigger message you're trying to get out there?
It doesn't bother me. If anything, I feel like maybe my hair draws them in and then they read the words, so that's okay. But once I got a troll a couple of months ago who said something like, well, you're only famous because of your hair. And I was like, well, you know what? There are worse things to be known for.
That's so funny. Do you do your own hair?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, wow. It's really fun. Thank you so much, Megan. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been really good. I'm going to go pee now.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just so you know, this conversation with Megan helped me make peace with Instagram. In fact, I'm posting some of the answers to your questions there, so for more of my conversation with Megan, check it out. Thank you for listening to the 5th episode of Everybody. I hope you will join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep the conversation going. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss next week's episode with Yvette Dion, culture writer, editor, and scholar. She was recently fat-shamed and misdiagnosed by a doctor, and we talked about this all too common experience. Until next time, everyone,